Hello Internet, welcome to our next Hub mission guide. We're going to be talking about the third mission for the Hub, and this is, let's just get it out of the way now, this has been incredibly difficult. The mission itself is very difficult, and I would not recommend you do it until you are a very geared character, and I'm saying end game character at this point, until you have a ton of stuff at your disposal. We're going to be getting very spoilery, so if you don't want to listen to spoilers, now is your one and only warning to step away. And we're going to talk about the third mission of the Hub. It was very difficult for me to record this episode. I had a lot. It seemed like every time I thought I knew what was going on, there was always something new that popped up that was more difficult and harder to capture. So the footage is a bit sporadic. We're going to be jumping between multiple characters. I ran through this mission multiple times. Some of them I cheated, some of them I did straightforward. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of footage. So anyway, we're going to go to the Hub. We're going to talk to the intercom as we have before. And we're going to say, do you have any jobs that need done? Once again, they do have work for us. So we will ask them to tell us about it, and they will give us some dialogue. Our facility once sourced advanced photonic circuitry from a nearby robotics manufacturer. Their buildings suffered major damage during the portal storms and collapsed almost entirely. However, preliminary scouting reveals that the basement prototyping lab likely remains intact. We ask you to investigate the ruins and, if possible, retrieve a template for the fabrication of said photonic circuitry. And we'll say we'll do it because, of course, we will. At this point, we're running errands for them left and right anyway, and it's definitely a one-sided relationship. Once again, we can ask them for advice, and they will tell us that the scout drone they used has also revealed extensive heat signatures and high concentrations of toxic compounds within the ruins, so plan accordingly. We are willing to sell you some protective gear at a discount if you require it. Now, I didn't realize this at first. I thought you would buy this from them in their trade menu. That's actually not how you do that. There is another option once we back out to the main dialogue screen, and it will say, so about that protective gear. And if we speak to them, I don't have footage of this, sorry about that. If we speak to them, they will say, we'll give you some gear for 2 hub coins. We happen to get 2 hub coins for the completion of the last mission, so you're pretty guaranteed to have those things. I personally don't think it's worth. So basically they will give you a gas mask and a Hub01 environmental suit. I don't think it's worth the 2 hub coins because essentially we're trading them $100 of value for a gas mask essentially. At the stage of the game where you're going to be completing this quest, you probably already have a gas mask. I would recommend not doing this. It's just too much money for a gas mask when they're pretty easily obtained elsewhere. And a gas mask is one of the essential tools for this mission. I would highly, highly recommend you get one. So if you don't have one and you need one, I guess trade them for it. But I would rather have the hub coins personally. Speaking of that, let's go over what our gear should look like for this mission, because it is the first mission where you actually have to go in prepared. So my recommended loadout looks something like this. Number 1, you're going to need a firearm, and I mean 100% you need a firearm. You cannot go into this situation in melee. In the last episode, in the last quest, I used the 50 cal, and I just feel like that was kind of cheating. Like, not everyone has the 50 cal, but again, by the time you get to the stage where you're going to be doing this quest, you probably should have one. It would definitely be useful here, but I went in using my SIG 552. It's my preferred 223 rifle, and again, 223 ammunition so common, it just makes sense. Now, I did go in with a 150 round clip. These were added to the game recently. It's the largest clip, I think. There might be a 200 round one, but you definitely, you need a gun, and you're going to need tons of backup ammunition. And I mean, I went through probably 300 rounds minimally trying to clear this place. So backup clips that are filled with ammunition, backup loose ammunition, you definitely need those things. So I would highly recommend that. Next, I also chose to bring some grenades with me. This is not strictly necessary, but there is one enemy that is much easier to deal with grenades, so I would recommend you take them. Any explosive will do. And then additionally, there are some clusters of enemies and immobile enemies that are pretty easily dealt with grenades and can be a little bit tricky to deal with a gun because they have so much HP. We'll talk about them when we talk about the enemies that are here. But I definitely think grenades make things a lot easier. I also would recommend taking a grappling hook. This will make getting up and down, because we're going down a Z level in a destroyed building, so we're going to need a grappling hook or some other way of getting back up. I recommend the grappling hook. It's just a little bit easier. As previously mentioned, the gas mask is something that I consider absolutely essential. You may even want to bring backup gas mask cartridges. I did not. I don't know the rate at which the gas mask actually goes through cartridges, but it is absolutely a necessity in my opinion. And then finally, I also brought a jackhammer. Currently, with containers in the state that they are, you can't actually fit a jackhammer in a standard backpack. So I actually left it outside until I was able to retrieve it later. But depending on the map layout you get, you very well may need a jackhammer. So I would recommend all of those things, and I absolutely feel that these are necessary. I feel like you could maybe get away without the grappling hook, but everything else is something that if I were doing this casually, these are the items I would need to take with me. Now you'll see this is also on my cheat character, so I do have a artifact that will reveal the world around me. That's obviously cheating, but you know, if you happen to have an artifact that lets you see through walls, I would encourage you to bring that as well. So let's talk about the mission log. The mission in the log is listed as light retrieval for the intercom. We need to reach the collapsed tower's basement and search the ruins for a photonic circuitry template. They warned us about heavy enemy presence and of the existence of a hazardous environment. Now, I initially thought that this meant radiation. I was unable to detect any radiation. I did take a Geiger counter just to check, and as far as I can tell, there's no radiation. What they mean is the toxic gas, which is why the gas mask is, in my opinion, essential. So, again, it will point out the coordinates on our map, and this time for me, it was quite a ways away. This would have taken me probably about an in-game hour to drive all the way over there, given the locations between us. Once you've located the tower, it's just a game of clearing out enemies, and my god, I had to clear out a lot of enemies, and I mean dozens and dozens and dozens of enemies, and it was unclear to me whether they were coming specifically from the tower or if they were coming from the city around it, but there was a ton of monster density in and outside the tower. So obviously, if this is in a location that you've never been to before, you want to clear up to it. You don't want to try to sneak in at night. That's going to go very badly for you. I would not recommend that because you're not going to be able to see as you're going around. I suppose you probably could sneak in if you knew exactly where you were going, but I personally feel like I would want to come here in the daylight. I don't know. Actually, now that I'm saying it, I feel like you should do you. If you feel like you're stealthy and can get in and out without issues, that's fine. But you're going to be shooting a lot, so you need to understand that if you're playing in the dark and you're shooting a lot of things, enemies are going to come to you one way or the other. So I just prefer to clear during the daylight. And my god, it took a long time. And once I got to the building, it's in ruins. There are a few points in which you can actually get access to the building. I did need to sledgehammer through some rebar at certain points because you couldn't really get into the building itself. So sledgehammer might be something that you'll need, but really any bashing tool will do. Rebar is not that resilient, and it's something you can break down. Not super easily, but it's doable. This is where I first saw the enemies in this location, so why don't we take a moment and discuss the different enemies that are available in this mission that, as far as I know, only appear in this mission. I don't believe they exist anywhere else in the game. And if you ever come across this location while you're just out and about on your low-level new character, I would recommend you run away as quickly as possible. I've seen it in my other playthroughs, and I've always avoided it because I didn't know what it was. Now that I understand the enemies better, 100% recommend you run away if you're not a geared character, because some of these enemies are quite dangerous. Now, the first enemies that I came across are called Gangrenous Impalers. They are, in my opinion, the most innocuous enemy, or one of the most innocuous enemies we're going to see. This is what they look like in the Dead People tile set. And what's interesting about these characters is that they're super duper slow. So that means they very rarely get to make attacks, and they really don't move in pursuit of you. They mostly just stand still. I did look in the code, and in the code they have a ranged ability that is supposed to paralyze you, but I never was able to get that to happen. I basically walked around it and let it hit me multiple times. It never paralyzed me. It never did anything like that. So it's unclear of me whether, I don't know if this is just broken or if it's working as intended and I'm just super lucky. Even when I tried this on my naked character, I was never paralyzed. But it's important to note that that exists. So I don't want to say I didn't tell you. You can't say I didn't warn you. Their melee damage is insignificant. Again, they attack so slowly that it's irrelevant. Really, they don't really damage you. And they don't really move. They leap. They have a leaping ability, so they will move several tiles in a quick burst, but really they're not threatening. When these enemies are killed, they do explode in a cloud of toxic gas. You've seen this with the gas bag zombies that you'll see in like a butcher shop. Pretty standard as far as things go, but they're not super dangerous, so just give them a wide berth if you're not wearing your gas mask when you kill them, but other than that, they're not particularly threatening. The next enemy we're going to talk about is the gangrenous crawler. Now this is much more of a concern. These enemies are quite fast and they have a leap ability that lets them close ground with you quickly, and then they do have melee attacks that are much more effective than the little baby one we just talked about. I've already forgotten their name. And these things seem to spawn in packs. So when I find one, I generally find 5 or 6 more, and it's very easy for them to surround you. The damage that they deal is relatively low, at least for this character wearing some armor, but they definitely can hurt you, and in a pack they will overwhelm you and cause you a lot of problems. So I would highly recommend trying to take these on out of range before they get close to you. And again, these explode into a toxic gas cloud. So I don't know of a great way to deal with these. I would recommend just shooting them because they seem pretty easy to target. The initial enemy we talked about is small, so they can be a bit hard to hit, but because they're so innocuous, it doesn't really matter. These creatures are more damageable, but they are pretty dangerous as well, especially because they spawn in large groups. Next, let's talk about the trapped tendril. Now, the first thing I noticed upon spawning this guy in is that if you get close to him, he will knock you back and slam you to the ground. So that is issue number 1. This is by far the most dangerous creature we're going to talk about. Issue number 2 is that if you get within sight of them, they will vomit blood all over the place, which is cool but weird, and they will spawn additional enemies. So I looked in the code. They have basically every turn they get a chance to spawn an enemy. 1 in 12 chance to spawn an enemy, and that will either be the gangrenous impaler or the gangrenous crawler. Now, for me, it seemed a lot more than 1 in 12, but basically these guys generate lots of enemies. And the real issue here is that they can do it really quickly, and it's very easy for you to get overwhelmed. Now, in addition to that being a problem, they also have a ton of HP. Shooting them takes forever, and in that time that you're shooting them, they have a chance to spawn additional enemies. Mine took multiple shots from this SIG. In fact, it took 12 shots from my SIG to kill it, and when they die, they also explode in a bunch of a poison cloud. Now again, the issue with them is that they generate enemies. However, the only real benefit in our favor is that it only happens if they can see you. So, in the building, a lot of times there are broken down walls that will block line of sight. So if you see one, honestly, I would recommend just running away from it unless it's directly in your path that you have to go. I don't see any reason to engage them at all, and the more you get close to them, the more likely you are to get overwhelmed by enemies. So would highly recommend to treat them with respect and stay away from them. Finally, there is a 4th enemy. This one is pretty innocuous. It is called the Flesh Wall. We'll see those a little bit later. They're essentially just enemies that block your path. They don't actually, as far as I know, they never attack. They never do anything to you. It's just something you have to kill to get through it. And we'll see those once we start exploring the basement. Oh good, and I also forgot a monster, so let's talk about that really quick and just jam it into the episode. The final creature is called the Gangrenous Flesh. It is pretty pointless. If you walk up to it, it explodes in a cloud of toxic gas. As far as I can tell, it doesn't have an attack. You can never get close enough for it to attack you. If you shoot it or walk up on it, it will explode. These are located mostly in the basement. I actually did not see very many when I played through this. These spawned pretty radically, and it's a good time to mention all of these enemies are completely random. So the first time I came in to go into the basement, I saw only the little baby creatures. I didn't see any of the big ones. I didn't see any of the tendrils, and I thought that was it. And then I came in on another character, and there was so much more monster diversity. So what you get, I don't know if it's connected to monster evolutions or if it's just completely random, It's just going to be random which of these enemies you encounter. And again, the standing immobile tendrils that spawn new enemies, those are by far the most dangerous, the ones you have to be the most careful with. Now, when you finally cleared the area and actually made it into the building, you'll see that everything's been pretty destroyed. It's a little difficult to navigate. There are pathways through most of the area, but you, again, may need a sledgehammer to break down certain rebar cages. You may need the pickaxe to go through walls, depending on the path that you take. Not only that, but there are, again, enemies in this building, including the gangrenous creatures. And in addition to that, I found that the building I initially went to was on fire. So that was really exciting. Later on, I actually died to this fire because of the hot air incapacitating my character. So be careful when you're going through here. There are lots of issues. I saw a lot of acid zombies and the gangrenous creatures, the fire. There's holes in the ground. There's a lot of stuff here to be wary of. But if you can clear the ground floor, you can pretty much proceed with the mission. When you're ready and you have a little bit of free space, there's basically two ways for you to get access to the basement, okay? Number one is to go down the stairs. These stairs are hidden under desks in the entry area. It can be a little bit difficult to find, but it kind of looks like reception. There are big glass walls, and depending on your tile set, mine actually displays the down arrow indicating stairs, even though there's furniture over top of it. So for me, it kind of was cheaty. I just knew exactly where they were. But it's these 4 desks or counters that are located in the reception area. 3 of them are blocked off. Basically, every time I came here, it was always the same. It was the lower left stairwell that was accessible. The other 3 would not let you go down. Once you go and you find those stairs, you can try to descend them the way you normally would, and it will give you a prompt about using your grappling hook. If you say yes, it will create a way for you to climb back up. So that is why I recommend bringing the grappling hook. I did try on another character without the grappling hook, and it did let me climb back up. But if you do it that way, you need to mark your location of the stairs so that you will know where you were climbing up, because otherwise you're not going to know. Now, every time I've descended the stairs, regardless of what playthrough I'm using or what character, it's always the same. It's always a blocked off area, and that is going to be problematic for us. Now, instead of going down the stairs, you do have a secondary option, but I would not recommend this because it guarantees you will take damage. There is a hole that is always on this location. You will find them behind these 2 closed doors. It was present every time I tried to come here and do this quest. And you can just jump in the dang hole, which is not a good thing to do. You are going to take a significant amount of damage spread out over all your body parts. So that's definitely something to be aware of. And falling damage in this game absolutely wrecks your clothing. So if you have a lot of gear on that you want to protect, I would not recommend this. However, the benefit of coming down this way is that it always seems to be in a more open area, so you don't have to pickaxe your way out. Every time I go down the stairs, I'm always blocked off by rock, and I actually have to mine my way out in order to get access to the rest of the lab. So that's something to bear in mind. It's all about, risk reward. What do you think is better for you? I personally think you should probably clear the ground floor, descend the stairs, and then pickaxe your way out. But I realize that that's not something everyone can do or everyone will want to do, but that would be my recommended strat. This is where I was talking about the flesh walls occurring. These are the big blobs that you're seeing here on the screen. They kind of look like brains almost. These things just block your path. They don't seem to have an attack or anything like that. So they're pretty insignificant. There is a lot of monster density down here, including some albino penguins that seem to spawn every time I do this. So I'm not sure why there are penguins here. But by the time you get to them, most likely they and the zombies will have fought each other anyway. Or certainly the gangrenous creatures seem to be able to poison them, which is interesting. I didn't know they were poisonable, but I saw them drop dead kind of for no reason, and I gotta assume it was the poison. Anyway, regardless of how you get there, and I'll be honest, I cheated because going through this was super tedious. There's enemies around every corner. It's very annoying to have to try to pickaxe your way through, break down the rebar. It's totally doable in a legit way. On my first character, I got all the way over here and got killed by the robot. But it's definitely doable. It's just about patience. It's about knowing when to back off, when to attack, because there's a lot of creatures down here, and that can be pretty freaking terrible depending on how geared you are and whether you came into this prepared or not. The thing we're looking for is over here in this lab area. It's inside that glass room on the right hand side, and it's being protected by a UGV, which is an unmanned ground vehicle, I think is what that stands for. And this is where I recommend bringing the grenades. There are two situations where I would recommend the grenades. One is the tendrils that spawn enemies. They can go down a lot faster if you use a grenade. And then two is with the robot, because the robot can absolutely ruin your day if you walk in and try to shoot it. So what I found was most effective was to prime a grenade and throw it into the room with the robot when the robot is in a position where I can actually safely get in line of sight with the room. Throw the grenade in, back off so I don't get damaged by the explosion, and let the bomb destroy the UGV. This worked for me basically every time, and I only had to use one grenade. But if you don't have grenades, I don't really know what to tell you, because I would really highly recommend you not go in there and try to shoot this robot. I would recommend you not go in there and try to melee the robot. Grenades are the only way I can think of that you can safely do this. Finally, we will cross the room and pick up the Nano Fabricator template, which is, it's cool, I guess. It's clearly worth millions. The price is worth $2 million, I believe, and it has very low barter value. And at this point, we're ready to just backtrack. You would backtrack to however you got in. If you came in through the hole, you would have to build yourself a step ladder in order to climb out of the hole. If you came down the stairs, you would just go back up your same path and go up the grappling hook. And then you just want to head back to Hub01. Oh boy, we got them their fancy Nano Fabricator. Now at this point I was deaf because of the grenade, so I actually had to wait a while. The grenade deafened me for quite a long time. But we can go back, we can talk to the intercom, and we will say, yes, I have retrieved your blueprints. And we will get excited for all the lore that's going to... Just kidding, there's no lore. It just ends the quest. There's no... Nothing happens. They give you a handful of Hub01 coins. They don't tell you what they needed it for. They don't tell you why it was so important. They don't give you like heaps of praise. They do nothing. They give you $200 worth of stuff, and that's it. And then that's the end of the quest line currently. There's no other quests. And it's such a bummer that this and the last quest just end. There's no lore. There's no fun dialogue or anything. It's just over, and that really rubs me the wrong way, because this mission, it took me hours of like real time just to get 20 minutes of footage. It took me forever. It was so difficult trying to go through the basement with a SIG and just shooting and shooting and shooting. The time, it's so tedious. It took forever. Some of the enemies are bonkers. The tendrils are so powerful. They spawn things way too fast. And it's super, super difficult. And I would recommend, honestly, I don't even think it's worth the $200, because the amount of ammunition you're going to burn through, giving up a grenade or two, the potential damage to your clothing and gear and your own character's health, just doesn't feel worth it at all for me. Alright, so I messed something else up. Apparently there is quite a bit of value in that basement, and I just didn't realize it at the time because I was so focused on the quest. So in this basement, in the same room that has the photonic whatever that we're supposed to retrieve, to the north of that is, here we can see it has some Nano Fabricator templates. These are similar to the item that we were picking up. They use the same sprite in this particular tile set. And what these do is unveil basically recipes for the Nano Fabricator. In addition to that, there are materials that you use for making items in the Fabricator. And then also in a room to the north, there are more of these canisters. Now, I want to stress, I've played through dozens, hundreds probably of labs in my lengthy time playing Cataclysm. I've never once seen one of these Nano Fabricators, so they're not super common, so I don't know. These things are very valuable. People talk about the templates being very valuable. The holographic cloak in particular is one that people bring up as one of the best items in the game. I've never seen the thing, never used the thing. But I need to mention it because I was complaining about, oh, like they only gave us $200 worth of stuff. It's not even worth it. These things are, by all accounts, incredibly valuable if you can get them made. So if you find one of these Nano Fabricators in a lab, absolutely you should do this quest because you're pretty guaranteed to get some kind of recipes as well as the materials necessary for crafting them. So again, I don't have personal experience with them. I can't tell you which items are the best, but it definitely needed to be mentioned that there is good stuff down here. There is a Nano Fabricator machine in this room. It's right next to the item we pick up for the quest, but it does not have a console, so I could not get it to work, and someone on Discord said it needs to have a console next to it, so I think that is the issue. So this one does not appear to be functional. Again, I did this on multiple playthroughs just to get an idea of what is there, what is valuable, what is not. Never was able to get it to work, and the recipes I found did change, but the nano canisters always were the same. It's worth noting as well that the 100 nano canisters in the north room here, those are actually isolated by rock, so you can't just walk in. You have to know where you're going and pickaxe through the wall. I think that's a bit silly because if you don't know, then you're never gonna randomly strike out picking underground because it takes so long to do so. So yeah, I mean, now that you know, hopefully that is helpful, but I do wish that was open to the world, and in every game that I came here, it always was in that blocked off room. It was never accessible. So unless you know where it is, you're not going to just stumble on it, but definitely needed to mention that. So again, going to shove this in the episode. Sorry about that, but it was that or re-record the whole dang thing, and honestly, I'm so blown out on editing that I'm over it, and I don't want to do that, even though that would be the best thing for the content. So back to the episode. And admittedly, $200 is nothing to sneeze at, but like, I did not feel satisfied by this quest. I think it's a really cool idea. I love that they made custom monsters. Again, I love the Hub01 coins. I think that's a really cool thing. I like the idea of quests from the hub. I saw Candleberry today posted an update that's going to give a side quest for the hub in the future. So I like the idea of the hub. But after doing this mission, all I could feel is like, man, this was such a headache for virtually no reward at all. And by the time you do this, you're going to be so geared that, like, what could they even give you? So, like, I feel like this quest really is about giving you something to do. I don't think it's about the reward. I think it's basically just so an end-ish game character can have something fun and different to do, you know, and can see new monsters and go new places. So I definitely probably would not do this in a casual playthrough, but if you're geared and you want something new to do, absolutely would recommend you do this. It's an interesting location. I do think that the building itself needs some work. I feel like, despite being a collapsed building, putting me in a box where I can't exit after going down the stairs, that really bothers me. I feel like you should at least give me maybe a narrow path that I can navigate myself. I don't like the idea of having to drag a pickaxe down there and pick through solid rock just to get to a quest item. Kind of bothers me, but at the same time, it is an endgame quest where they're, you know, it is intended to be difficult. So, man, 30 minutes. I hope this was coherent. I'm really worried that in editing, this is all going to fall apart. I feel like the first two hub guides went super well, and then this one, I just was stunned the whole time because like it was just so much more work than I expected, especially after doing the last two quests, which you can complete very quickly. This third mission is much more involved, much more difficult, much more tedious enemy clearing out. So I don't really know what to say about it, but I think that's it for the episode. Hopefully that all made sense. Hopefully this is a good episode. Fingers crossed. I'm a little worried it's going to be rambly and stuff. So for now, that's going to do it. I think, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully that all made sense. I'm very worried that it's not going to make sense and be really rambly, but we'll see. If you enjoyed, maybe click the like button, maybe subscribe, maybe leave me a comment. If I missed anything, leave me a comment because there was so much. Like, I recorded stuff and then I found out more, and then like, oh, they have a paralyzed attack, so then I have to look up the paralyzed attack, and it just snowballed all this little stuff. So if I'm missing something obvious, please put it in the comments down below. I'll pin it so everybody can see it, that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll be back with something new in the near future.